All right. So, welcome to our Sunday call. This is the Sangha UK, and that Pedro started with the question that had to do with the Brahmalokas, the Brahmaviharas, and things like this. And the question is, are these physical places, are they magical places, or are they emotional states? And can you be in an emotional state? Pedro, can you mute your microphone? It's kind of noisy where you are. Good. All right. So, what is the Brahma Lokas? What are the Brahma Viharas? Or we don't even have to talk about it in the sense of the Asian, because in the West we have that concept, like the concept of heaven. Heaven is where God is. And yet, as I mentioned just before we started the call, God is not satisfied with heaven. He was bored there, so they say. And so he started humanity. And then he became dissatisfied with humanity and had a great big flood. There's also stories about there were angels there that were not satisfied. And so Lucifer starts the war and gets kicked out. So, what kind of heaven is a heaven that is boring, that is dissatisfying and failures? I mean, God considers humanity a failure. He's trying to wash them out. This is the whole idea then is that, well, what is a heaven? And a heaven would be something that's good enough, something that you're going to be there for a while. And that we can practice that in fact our heavenly states are emotional states. Any heaven that you have is going to only be a heaven if you like being there. And this is actually what Anapanasati practice is all about. That the Buddha is talking about, we don't need those foreign places with those foreign concepts about what is, let us say, what's in store for you, because what's really in store for you is how you feel when you feel the way that you want to feel. So, Marcus, what is heaven for you? What are the heavenly realms? Go ahead.
Feeling calm and satisfied, confident,
All right.
at ease.
Being at ease, being at peace, being restful. And that's something that we can practice. In fact, Marcus, you seem pretty laid back, pretty cool right now. Is that something that you've been practicing?
When I remember.
When you remember, that's right. That we can create our heaven because it's the way that we feel. And we can practice that. That this is what the real teachings of the Buddha is that when we come out of our dukkha, when we come out of our dissatisfaction, there's only one place for it to go. It's like an either or. You're either satisfied or you're dissatisfied. And what happens is that we go back and forth between the two. Now the question is can you remember when you're in a state of dissatisfaction to come in to a state of satisfaction? Can you remember to do that? Can you remember to take a look and see that you're not in a state of satisfaction, that you've got some unwholesome thoughts? And this is what the whole teaching of the Buddha is all about. That's why we have this thing called the Eightfold Noble Path, is the sati is to remember, the ditti is to look, to see what's going on. Because if we can take a look and see what's going on, we can make a change. And when we make a change, we have a choice. The question is, what are you going to change it to? And the answer to that would be the better the skills you have, then the more closely you're going to feel the way that you want to feel. Now, there's a lot of different ways to feel: left, right, up, down, back, and forth, and then you have the issue of intensity. And the important point is that you can choose to feel the way you want to feel. You can choose what you want. And most people are in the habit of choosing dissatisfaction. Oh, there's still work to do. Oh, this is not good enough. Oh, if only. Well, let's start practicing that. So, Carl, if you could feel the way you wanted to feel, how would you feel right now, knowing that later
Like I do
you might,
feel right now,
huh?
full of joy, and then that joy I have extra to give. So that's what I choose to feel right now.
Great. That's the whole point is that we can choose to feel the way that we want to feel, and that all of those people who don't feel the way they want to feel right now say, well, what if I was at this place? Then I would feel good. That if I was in heaven, then I would feel heavenly. And yet we have all of this evidence about all the stories of heaven that heaven is not a heavenly place at all. The first thing that we learned about after God, I guess that he blew things up because he was dissatisfied before. And so that's why he blew things into creation, is because he was unhappy before. Maybe nothing was not good enough for God, so he had to do something. And then it wasn't good enough, and so he spent 6 days. The first thing he did was what? Heaven and light, let there be light, because darkness wasn't good enough. And eventually by day six, he's out there inventing humans because the animals weren't good enough. And so this is the whole idea then, is that after God invented the humans, he's still not happy with them, and he goes and brings a flood. So what good is heaven if it's not a happy place for you? And how can you find that state of joy? Does it have to be someplace else, or can it be right where you are right now? The Chinese have a saying about that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step, right? Well, how can you take a step? You have to take a step only when you have the confidence that that step is going to get you someplace. But then as soon as you take that step, now what have you got? You've taken a step. Okay, that's 3 feet maybe out of 1,000 miles. The next thing to do is to say, well, I'm satisfied with that step. Let me take another. And then we're satisfied with that step, so let me take another step. And this satisfaction then will begin to build. That in fact we have concepts about heaven, and yet heaven is not all of that what it's cracked up to be, but we do have a choice about how we feel, and the more often we exercise the choice about how we feel, then we give ourselves even more choices to expand our horizon so that we can feel even better. That normally when I ask the students about how good could you feel, most students don't even have a clue about, well, how good could I feel? Why is that? It's because we've got fairly limited ideas about how good we feel. Normally we wonder about how bad I feel. And so the question is, can we remember that we have a choice? Can we remember to take a look at the situation that we're in, the way that we feel about it, and then knowing that we can make a choice, that we can improve it? One step at a time, this is good enough. And pretty soon we begin to gain confidence, more confidence, confidence of success. That in fact we can't even begin to practice anapanasati without having the idea that maybe, just maybe, it will be of value. And so we take that first step. And if it's successful, we'll take another and another and another. And pretty soon, we've gotten someplace. We're beginning to develop confidence. The confidence is that we're going in the right direction. And part of that confidence of going in the right direction is because we're satisfied with that one step. Most people will say, oh, well, I'm not satisfied one step. And then we quit because that one step wasn't good enough. We kind of think that, oh, that one step should get us the whole 1,000 miles instead of just getting one step. So one step at a time, can you be satisfied with it to be able to take another? I just talked to a student earlier today that hadn't called me in a long time because he had lost confidence that he was making progress. But if I can instill him with the confidence that he can start again. Yeah, sure, we're going to fall down from time to time. The question is can we see that and then make the change to get up again and make another step? Maybe 2 or 3 more steps, and then we fall down again. Never mind, start again. We pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and says, hot dog, I can take another step. And that's the way that we practice being in heaven, is one step at a time. That right now is good enough. And guess what? If we keep getting that attitude of right now is good enough, we begin to feel like right now is good enough. And when we feel right now is good enough, isn't that a kind of a paradise? Isn't that a kind of a heaven? Sure it is. And if we practice it, then our paradise grows because our confidence, our skill, and our attitude grows. One step at a time, one breath at a time. But then we'll get the idea, oh no, I can't do it. Then in fact we begin to get the idea that we can do it and we can do it, and then all of a sudden something happens and we say, wait a minute, it's not working for me now, and then we quit. The question is, can you remember that you did get success, you'll get success again. Never mind you falling into unwholesome thoughts about your practice. Recognize that and say, hey, I was making one step at a time. Let me get up and take another step. The step that we take right now is the step of becoming satisfied. Now, you've heard me talk about this before. In fact, the word that we're talking about in this sense of satisfaction is the Pali word of sukha. And sukha is just the opposite of the word dukkha, which is dissatisfaction. So if we can practice one satisfaction, then it's got several components. For instance, if you're uncomfortable, you're not going to be satisfied. So we have to get ourselves into a state of being comfortable, mostly with the body, of getting the body comfortable. Also, we need to be in a safe, secure place with the body. If the body is in a dangerous place, then we're not going to feel safe. This is why I recommend people do not practice anapanasati at a police station. Not a safe place. Being around people who are not safe and feel unsafe are not safe people to be around. It's better to be around people who already feel safe. This is what Sangha is really all about, is that if you could feel safe and secure, then in fact if you trust someone, and this is what the Watts are really all about. Imagine that a Watt is very much like a medical center or a hospital, and everybody in the hospital is there to get treatment. But if you've had your treatment, there's no reason to stay in the hospital unless you're there as a doctor. And this is what we find in all of these Watts is a doctor. It's generally the abbot. And an abbot has to be been a monk for 20 years. And after 20 years of the Dhamma, you're probably pretty good at it. That in fact, one of the students who's staying at a Wat now, he says is that the abbot is busy all the time. He's got stuff to do. But what he is doing is for the welfare and the benefit of other people, not for himself. Why is that? Because he doesn't need anything for himself, but he's there to help other people. Now, most of us, when we go to the Wat, we would think that all of these people at the Wat are all very holy, all very special people. And in fact, almost everybody at the Wat has that same attitude that you do, that everybody else is better than you are. And only the abbot is the one who has the attitude of things are already okay. And here I have all of these sick people that are sick with not being satisfied. And so that's the job of the abbot, is to help people to feel safe and secure and satisfied. So many Wats will actually have a few monks, maybe a lot of monks, who do feel safe and secure and satisfied, and they're all there together then to help all of these lay people and younger monks to become safe, secure, and satisfied. That in fact, when we're born into a state of victimhood, that we're victims in the sense that we're dependent upon others. And one of the things that I can see in the Western society is most children do not love, respect, honor, and trust their parents. Why is that? Because the parents are not worthy of that trust, because they don't trust also. So now we're going to grow up in a society that's distrustful of other people in the society. And one of the qualities of making a friend is that you trust them. That's what friendship is really all about, is that you trust them. You trust them to not hurt you. And so we have very few friends because most of the people that we associate with, we don't trust them. And this is why it's so valuable to go to the Wat, is because you're going to find an abbot there that you can trust. That's in fact the relationship that I had with Achan Po. I trusted him. I knew that he cared for me. I spent about 3 years or so with Goenka, and I never got that sense of trust with him. He was the teacher. He was the guru. He departed a lot of wisdom. But I didn't have that sense of belonging, that I was always a kind of a foreigner there. But when I got to Wat Suan Mok, that was one of the things that I got from Achan Po, is that I can trust him. Maybe we could use the word he cared for me, that I knew that he had best benefit for me in mind. And so I was willing then to become a good student of his because I trusted him. And this is what we can find with the abbots of these Wats, is that they're trustable. And so we can find that way of coming out of our doubts and be able to trust and have friends. And when we do that, it will begin to grow. That in fact, one of the reasons why we have no satisfaction is because we have doubt. We don't trust it. We don't trust our practice. And so one of the things that we have to develop then is that sense of trust. It's good to be around someone that you do trust, so that you can gain that feeling of trusting. If you can trust them, then you can learn to trust yourself. And if you can trust yourself, then you can learn to trust other people. And if you can learn to trust other people, then you can learn to trust all of the people, all of reality. They may not do what you want them to do, but you trust that you know what they are going to do, and that they're not going to hurt you if you can stay out of their way. So that's also part of the trust that we're getting, is that they can't hurt you even when they try. But that's a fairly advanced state. We need to be able to trust someone in the beginning, to learn to build that trust. with that trust comes satisfaction. And satisfaction is exactly what the Buddha is teaching. There's the word dukkha, which means we're dissatisfied, and then there's the word sukha, which is just the opposite of that, to, to be satisfied. Well, we can only be satisfied when we feel safe and secure. We can't be satisfied when we're in danger. Also, we can't be satisfied when we're not comfortable. That, in fact, in the Pali Directory or the Pali Dictionary or the Pali Lexicon, if you want to call it that, it gives the definition in English of the Pali word of sukha has all of those qualities. That's why I keep harping on it. In order to gain sukha, you have to have safety, security, comfort, and with that, we can build satisfaction. And when we have the satisfaction, that's the conclusion of sukha, which means that if we're satisfied, then there is no dissatisfaction. So we're out of the dukkha. That's all the Buddha teaches is dukkha, dukkha nirodha, coming out of our dissatisfaction into a state of satisfaction. And when we're satisfied where we are, then that place is a paradise. And when we're dissatisfied with that place wherever we are, then it's our hell. And we created our own hell. And you now are learning that you can create your own paradise. You can create your own Brahma Viharas, the homes of the Brahmins, or the Brahmalokas, the world of the Brahmins. You too can become a Brahmin by trusting that you're good enough. This is what we have to do: is we have to practice being satisfied. Now, one example about this is that many people want satisfaction, and wanting satisfaction is not the same as having satisfaction. That, in fact, if we want satisfaction, now we're practicing wanting something that we don't have. That wanting satisfaction is dukkha. We have to actually practice being satisfied. So we begin to look for things that are satisfying, like this breath. I mean, if you don't take this next breath, you're going to die. Can you at least be satisfied with the breath that you're taking because it's keeping you alive? Yeah, I'm still alive. I can still breathe. And that's enough. Just being satisfied with what we've got right now. Everything is okay. Everything is fine. And so this is how we practice anapanasati, is to look, but we can't look if we don't remember. It doesn't matter what skills you have. If you don't remember those skills, then you're not going to apply them. So even though right view comes first, because that's kind of a feeling or an attitude, we don't take that first step on a 1,000-mile journey unless we think that that step will get us at least a little bit closer. And so we can learn to become satisfied with one step at a time. If we can become satisfied, then we can practice being satisfied, and satisfaction will grow like a snowball going down a hill. Yeah, it's a little snowball, not much, but if you keep rolling it down the hill, eventually you'll have an avalanche. And that avalanche of good feelings is what they really mean by this heaven. So the question is, can you imagine that you can feel that good that it feels like an avalanche? This is what we call piti. It's like almost overwhelming. It's like, wow, I could do this. Yes, Carl, you got a question?
So while we're here of the overwhelming pity, I just wanted to share something of my own practice. Whenever I get really, 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 really overwhelmed, there's almost feels like there's that one last string of like to bring you down is your death. Like, oh, I feel good, but you're gonna die. So that one particular
Yeah, hot dog,
pity.
I'm going to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can, I mean, if that's part of the avalanche, then let's leave it there. We don't have to have, see, what you did was you had, but I'm going to. That but
Yeah.
is an unwholesome thought.
I see. Yes.
Hello,
Yeah.
Dr. Susan. The topic that
Hello,
we're,
everyone.
the topic we're talking about is the Brahmalokas or the Brahmaviharas, which are actually the homes of the gods or the land of the gods, the world of the gods. And the question is, how can we get into that state? Because mostly we have polluted ideas of like what is heaven. All of the stories about God is that he was dissatisfied. He was unhappy. He worked 6 days. One day he made animals, but that wasn't good enough. And then he made humans, and that wasn't good enough. And so he wipes them out with a flood, and that wasn't good enough. And so he sent his son, and that wasn't good enough. And so, why can God be in heaven and it's not good enough? We need to start to develop our own heaven, our own Brahmaviharas, our own Brahmalokas by satisfaction. That this is what we have to develop. And Carl was just mentioning that when it gets going, he'll say, "Oh yeah, everything is wonderful, but," and that's when those undissatisfaction thoughts will come up. But I'm going to die, or but this is going to be over, or but, and that's when we destroy our paradise. That God made man, but man wasn't up to scratch. So let's start looking at all of these buts that we have and recognize that, oh, those are just unwholesome thoughts that prevent us from being happy. That we can create our own heavens if the heaven is satisfying. If we feel good enough, then we're in heaven. And that good enough feeling will snowball. It will get bigger. But we have to start with a little bit of satisfaction, just a little bit. This is at least okay for the moment. So when you have the thoughts of, yeah, but I'm going to die someday, you can keep that in there and say, yeah, I'm going to die, hot dog. Let me have fun while I can. Most people are unhappy when they think about death, but actually, death is really a good thing. Can you imagine what life would be like if Socrates and Jesus and Caesar and all of them dudes were still around? Wow, it'd be really crowded. I'm really glad that people die. In a way, I'm even really glad that my mother's dead, because that gives me a freedom. The freedom of saying, well, hey, Mom, goodbye, you're gone. That death is a natural occurrence. The question is really, are you ready to be satisfied even upon your death? Can you welcome any and everything? Can you be satisfied with everything, even your last breath? That in Buddhism, they talk about that last mind moment, that last breath. How are you going to feel? Most people feel really miserable. That in fact, in the cowboy movies and the old things, the old movies like that, then after the guy gets stuck with a sword and he's taking his last breath and about to die, he'll say something like, "I'll see you in hell," because he's still got revenge on his mind, rather than, "Ha, you got me. Wow, this is all over. Thanks." Can we have that good attitude at the point of death? Well, guess what? If you can't have an attitude of happiness and joy now, you're probably not going to have a happy, joyful attitude when it's time to go. So the question is, can you handle anything? Because if you can handle anything, then you can handle even your own death, and you can handle that joyfully. You can handle that happily. But we don't. We always think about something's got to be better than this, and then we're in a state of dissatisfaction again. This is the teaching of the Buddha, is that we need to come out of our dissatisfactions and be satisfied. And it's a skill to be developed. And if we practice being satisfied, it will get better and better. So if you can practice having a little bit of heaven right now, a little bit of satisfaction right now, then your heaven will grow. But if you have the dissatisfaction, oh, this ain't it yet, then you'll always be in that state of this ain't it yet. So having the joy and the benefit of, wow, I can take one step, and I have the confidence I can take another step. And I have the joy and the happiness of taking one step, one drop at a time in a bucket, and pretty soon, over time, we're overflowing with joy. Just like that snowball rolling down the hill eventually is going to be the snowball the size of a snowman. It keeps going, and eventually it's going to create an avalanche of joy. This avalanche of joy is what is referred to as pity. Pity. Wow, this is so good. This is so great that I don't even have to worry about will it be over soon. Because if I worry about it being over soon, I've already destroyed it. I've already gone into unwholesome thoughts now. So we have to remember to look at the kind of thoughts we have, make a determination. Is this thought worth having? Is this thought a joyful thought that's taking me into satisfaction, or is this an unhappy thought that's taking me into despair, worry, takes me into that state of mind that I need a psychologist? But if we don't need a psychologist, the only reason that we don't need one is because we've already got our heaven. We've already got a little bit of heaven. And the more we practice having a little bit of heaven, that heaven will grow. Just like that snowball rolling down the hill will pick up more and more snow. So this is how we practice. Another example of that is, imagine that a guy wants to play the piano. He has never played the piano. Maybe he's a young kid and mom gets him piano lessons. They buy piano books for beginners. And then he goes to the piano, then he goes right by the piano and he plays football all week. He's not practicing the piano. How does he expect to be able to play the piano if he's not practicing the piano? Well, that's how we do with our practice of anapanasati, is that we actually have to practice what we're doing. We have to practice being satisfied. We have to practice being safe, secure, and comfortable. Because if we're unsafe, it's hard to feel satisfied. If we're not comfortable, it's hard to feel satisfied. But for most beginners, even when they're safe and comfortable, it's still hard to be satisfied. And so we have to practice that. That at least I'm safe, at least I'm secure, at least I'm comfortable. Isn't that enough? So getting yourself safe and secure and comfortable is all we need, because that's enough. And then we can be satisfied with that. And we practice satisfaction. And we practice it again. And after a while, we begin to get the idea that, hey, I can be satisfied. That in fact, this is the Eightfold Noble Path. Remember to take a look and to make a change. So if you see yourself insecure, then mention, oh, well, there's nothing around this problem. I don't have any SWAT team busting down the door. There's no alligators on the floor. That actually I am safe. The reality is that I'm safe. Why do I feel insecure? Well, that's possibly because we're in the habit of feeling insecure. So we have to practice telling ourselves that we are actually in reality safe. And we can get the body safe and secure and then comfortable. And by telling ourselves we're safe, secure, and comfortable, we can begin to feel safe, secure, and comfortable. And when we do, we can begin to feel satisfied. Many times I have students say, well, I've been practicing Anapanasati, and I tell myself, no place to go, nothing to do, everything is okay, but I don't feel that way. And so they quit meditation because they think that they should be able to immediately talk themselves into it, not recognizing that they spent their whole life talking themselves into feeling bad. And now it's time to talk themselves into feeling good, but they're not going to get instant response. It's going to take a while. And we have to have the body in a safe, secure, comfortable environment because that's real. The real checkout is the body safe? Is the body secure? Is the body in danger? Is the body uncomfortable? Is the body in pain? And then when we deal with that and get the body safe, secure, and comfortable, then we can become satisfied. Just a little satisfaction, but that's on the way. Poor old God is just not satisfied. He's not satisfied with nothing. He's not satisfied with his Big Bang. He's not satisfied with darkness, and so he makes light. He's not satisfied with the void, and so he makes something out of it. He makes a heaven and an earth, makes the stars, eventually makes animals, and he's still not satisfied. And then he makes humans and takes a day off, but then the humans he's not satisfied with. And so he makes a flood. So begin to realize that the heavens that they know of in the Western mindset is not a heaven at all. In fact, the heaven of Christianity is a kind of a hell. That there's better ways that humans can come to having an actual heaven, an actual Brahmaloka, is by being satisfied with where you are. This is why the stories in the Hindu system and later with Buddhism is called the Tusita heavens. Why do people spend so long time in the Tusita heavens? Is because they're satisfied with being there. Can you get that satisfied? That everything is so satisfying that everything is okay. That you've got a heaven now. That you can manufacture your own heaven. You can manufacture your own paradise by being satisfied and content with where you are right now, that's good enough. Dr. Susan, do you have any comments about this?
Yes, I do. I mean, the people that I see as a psychologist, often there's a huge amount of dissatisfaction. And now I'm going to talk about myself as well. The times that I find myself, I don't know, dissatisfied or frustrated or angry or the unpleasant stuff is when somehow I have something I expect to happen, and then I'm living something different, and so my expectations come into it and I suffer. So dukkha.
Look at that word expect. The word spect has to do like the word with spectrum or spectroscopes, that kind of thing, is to be able to see. But when you expect something, that means that what you're looking at doesn't exist. That is off in the future. So right now, while we're expecting something in the future, we're not satisfied right now. So can we stop expecting something in the future and start enjoying what we've got right now? To stop expecting and just spect. Can we just see that right now it's good enough? You know, we have to look because we're in bad habits of wanting stuff, expecting stuff. We're trained that way in our society. There are some psychologists within transactional analysis that call mothers crazy makers. Especially,
yes, well, they would, wouldn't they?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said they would, wouldn't they?
Mm-hmm. Well, when a mother expects things from a child, when mothers lie to their children, when mothers make children do things that the child doesn't want to do, they're making the child crazy. And what is crazy? Unhappy. They're making their children unhappy. So now that you're an adult, it's up to you, because nobody's now, I mean, when we were really little kids, we were quite influenced, that we were complete victims then. Now you're not a victim, you're a mixture. And so only you can fix your own mind. No one else can do it for you. That's what a good psychologist has to do, is to have to train the person, their client, to be able to fix themselves. Otherwise, they'll need the psychologist to travel around with them everywhere they go. In fact, Goenka has a story about that a rich man could not remember, and so he hired, actually, he took one of his diplomats and made that diplomat follow him around so that the diplomat would say, "Oh, sir, now is not the time to get angry. Oh, sir, look at what you're doing." Okay, and guess what happened? The rich man got very angry, the king or whatever, and his ambassador says, "Oh, sir, now is not the time to get angry." And he says, "What do you mean it's not the time to get angry? I'm firing you." Right? That's what will happen. We can't have somebody else follow us around and wipe our nose and change our clothes for us anymore. Now we have to be responsible for ourselves to create our own paradise, to come out of our anger, our frustrations. And how do we do that? Is by seeing it and recognizing that this is unwholesome. This is not my pleasure. This is not my heaven. I'm creating my own hell right now. Let's stop doing that. Let's make a change. We can do that if we can remember, but we have to practice it. So actually, there are several skills that we have to develop. One is the skill of sati, to remember. Another skill is the skill of looking, because when people begin, they can tell a little bit about what's wholesome and what's unwholesome. The really, really big stuff, like I hate my sister, or I'm going to rob the bank, or I'm going to go get revenge upon that guy that cussed me out. Those we know are unwholesome thoughts. And then there's a few thoughts that we have that we know are wholesome. Like, wow, I finished the work. Wow, there's no place to go. Wow, I'm glad that client is out the door. Wow, I'm glad that everything is okay. All right, so there are unwholesome thoughts. But that's at like the extremes. What about that 99% of the stuff that's in the middle? Well, that's going to take some skill development so that we can become skillful at knowing what's wholesome and not wholesome. Also, there's this right effort, because in the beginning, we have all kinds of abilities to do effort, but most of it is wrong effort, working too hard. But in fact, we find a balance, just enough right action, just enough right effort. A little dab will do you as far as effort goes. Um, then, in fact, we have to have the extremes of no effort at all versus working way too hard. And this is what happens in meditation practice: is people will either work really too hard or not work hard, or not work at all, which means just one is actually wholeheartedly manufacturing unwholesome thoughts when they work too hard. They look at that dukkha. Dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. I got to get into that dukkha. I got to see to the bottom of that dukkha. I've got to do some real psychological archaeology here. I got to go get to the roots of all of this stuff. And we're creating dukkha. The other end of it is that, oh, I'm just going to let the dukkha roll. I'm not going to do anything about it. Both of them wind up being unhappy. Both of them are creating their own kind of hell. But there's a sweet spot in the middle path. between the extremes, which is just the right amount of effort to get the job done. And what is the job? To become satisfied. Just enough effort to come out of our unwholesome thoughts and come into the wholesome thought. Then, in fact, we can begin to gain the skill of right effort by seeing what is the right effort. And the right effort is to drop all of the stuff that is harmful to us and stay with just the easy part. It's really, the practice of the Buddha is really easy. It's a simple thing. But the balance has to be in taking the right effort to come out of the unwholesome and come into the wholesome thoughts. And we can do that immediately. We can come right out of our hell into our heaven just by recognizing that we're in hell and taking the effort to change it. And so, even though it may take about 20 years to become an abbot of a Wat, that 20 years is actually a mixture of good practice and ordinary practice. If someone would practice wisely and continuously have wholesome thoughts, doesn't happen. I've never met anybody who can just say, oh yeah, I understand the teaching of the Buddha, let me just do that, and then they do it all the time. That doesn't happen. All of us are a mixed bag. And when we can do it correctly, when we can find that sweet spot, is because we remember that we could do it. And so this problem of not remembering is because we don't have the skill. So sati is a skill to be developed, to keep remembering and to keep remembering and to keep remembering. This is why the Buddha mentions about anapanasati is to remember to take a long, deep breath. Remember to take a long, deep out breath. Why? Because we're actually developing the skill of sati. Every long in-breath you take, you remember. Every long breath out. And that's really amazing. I mean, we can't have a psychologist or an ambassador follow us around, but one thing for sure is that the breath is always there. All we have to do is remember the breathing. If we can remember to breathe, then we can also, because we're remembering to take a long, deep breath, we're actually changing, we're actually practicing right effort. The mind cannot control the breathing without the mind. That when we're developing the skill of sati for the breathing, we're actually developing the sati for the mind. So the mind is the forerunner. If we can remember to take a long, deep breath, then that's the kind of skill that we need to remember to take a long, deep pause before we hurt someone. To remember to slow down, to remember to take our time, to remember to be okay, that nothing is a problem, everything is all right. That's what we have to remember. And we can do that by building up these skills of the Eightfold Noble Path. So one skill is to remember. Another skill is to see the difference between what is wholesome and what's not wholesome. Another skill is the right effort. And then there's a fourth one. Once we start getting that state of satisfaction over and over and over again, once we have that satisfaction, we begin to get good at it. We begin to see that we can do it. And that's where the confidence comes in. This is a Pali word of Samma Sankappa, which is actually the attitude, but the attitude of I can do this. I can create a heaven for myself. I can do it, and it's good enough. And that attitude of can do is actually a major part of the path. In fact, it's the first knowledge. It's the first thing that we do is to gain that confidence that no matter how screwed up the mind gets, no matter how it's obstructed, no matter what the circumstances are, I can get out of that. I can change my mind. I can come back into the reality of the situation. This is actually in a sutta where the Buddha says that this is the first knowledge, and it's a knowledge that is both noble, it's a first step along the path, it is supramundane, it's away from the world, and most importantly, it's not what ordinary people do. Ordinary people, when they have a problem, they think they've got a problem. A noble, when he has a problem, he'll say, aha, that's not a problem at all. Depends upon my attitude. And so we're developing the attitude of a winner. We were all born as victims. We were all born as losers. We were all born dependent. And becoming an adult, one should hope, would be that when we are fully an adult, then we're fully in charge of our lives. But most people who are adults actually are still children. They really didn't grow up. We still see ourselves as victims. That in fact, religious people are victims. They need a God to take care of them, not recognizing that their God is probably in more trouble than they are. And so we can come out of our problems. We can find that sweet spot in the middle to where we can take the right effort, just enough, to find ourselves safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied. And when we get that satisfaction over and over again, then we know that we can do it. And that's something that not ordinary people have, is that confidence. The confidence that I can do it. I can live it out. I can handle it. And when that confidence grows to a really strong point, then we can learn that we can even handle our own death. And one thing about death is that what else is worse? If you can handle death, then you can handle anything. I mean, which would you rather have, the IRS knocking at your door or death knocking at your door? Or the police or whatever. And so we think that, oh, it's a tragedy when the police are knocking on our door. But if we can handle death knocking on our door, then we can handle anything. This is one of the reasons why the Buddha talks about contemplating death. That in fact, at Goenka retreats, they actually have an old video of an autopsy. Just go look at that autopsy, because a lot of us identify with that. Oh, it's me that's dead. Oh, poor me. Some people get sick when they're watching an autopsy. They pass out of fear. And so Anapanasati is going to bring us, if we're practicing correctly, into a state of satisfaction so that we can even watch an autopsy and be satisfied. Can you be satisfied with whatever happens? Because that's what the real teaching of the Buddha is, dukkha, coming out of your dissatisfaction into being satisfied all the time. Even if you see yourself doing something wrong or stupid, can you be satisfied with that? Can you say, yeah, I did something stupid, yeah, I did something wrong, but I'll fix it. And when I'm fixing it, I screw that up too. Yeah, so what? I can still handle that. I can fix my breakage, and then I can fix the original problem. Everything is going to be okay, and even if I can't solve that problem, I'm still all right. I do not determine my well-being based upon anything other than the well-being itself. This is the real teaching, is that you can find that sweet spot in the middle where you can be satisfied with whatever it is that occurs. Easy enough, but you have to practice it over and over and over again. An example of that would be someone new going to the gym, thinking that they could pick up 100 kilos, and they struggle and they work at it. And a good trainer will say, don't try 100 kilos. Here's a 1 kilo dumbbell. And what you have to do now is over and over and over and over and over and over again. Keep pumping that, and soon your muscles will build up, and then you can pick up that 100 kilos. but you have to practice those reps. So in our regard, that means that you have to practice having happy, contented, satisfied thoughts over and over and over and over again. We have spent our whole lives being dissatisfied. We've literally been talking ourselves into being dissatisfied. Now it's time to talk ourselves into being satisfied. And pretty soon, by talking ourselves into being satisfied, we'll begin to feel. Yeah, the feelings lag behind. Many students will quit. At that time, they say, oh, well, I've been practicing Anapanasati and I still feel like shit. Well, that's just an attitude. You can change that attitude and say, I've been practicing Anapanasati and I'm getting someplace. And then I'll continue to practice. And we'll begin to slowly change those feelings. And pretty soon we've got a snowball. And pretty soon that snowball is going to become the size of a snowman. And then after that, it's going to become an avalanche. But we have to practice that way. Just like the guy who's practicing with that dumbbell over and over and over again can eventually pick up that those barbells that weigh 100 kilos. But we have to keep practicing the little ones. Just a little dab of right effort. Just enough, over and over and over. Put that effort in to keep coming back to that state of satisfaction. That's all there is to it. Easy peasy. Pedro, did this answer your question in the beginning? That you can, in fact, create your own paradise.
Yeah.
One little rep at a time.
Yes.
How about you, Marcus? Do you have anything to say? Oh,
Yeah, I
Pedro
think,
came back.
Oh,
Well, yes, more than answered. More than answered. Covered a lot of doubts. More than just my question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have to learn to trust that we can do it. That's that samasankappa. That's that confidence. We begin to trust, and when we trust that we can do it, where's the doubt? The doubt's all gone now, because we know we've got it. We can handle anything. Can handle the IRS, we can handle the snakes, we can handle the charlatans, we can handle the gurus, we can handle the presidents, and we can handle our own death by just practicing. If you go into that gym and do enough reps, you can even pick up Donald Trump. Because he don't weigh nothing. He's not a heavy thing. See him as you can handle that. Marcus, do you have any comments?
yeah, I think it's important to reiterate that it's all about repetition, and I think just one aspect of it is that we keep coming back to the practice in our minds. But I think it's the same with the aspect of Sangha, like our surroundings affecting us. So when we go about our regular lives, depending on where we're at, it
exactly
tends to rub off sometimes in a bad way, which is why it's important to come back to the Sangha friends and talk about the Dhamma again.
Right. That when you're around people that you trust, you're practicing being trustful. And so this is why we have the Sangha, is it because we want to trust others and we want to be worthy of their trust. And so having good friends, a really clear, easy example of that is that when someone goes to AA, they've gotten tired of being an alcoholic. The first thing that the Alcoholics Anonymous group will tell you is stop associating with your drunken friends. You have to change the people that you're around. You have to stop dealing with unwholesome, untrustworthy people and start dealing with some wholesome, trustworthy people. That's why the AA wants you to be around their people. It's better to be around an ex-alcoholic who is practicing being an ex-alcoholic than practicing being an alcoholic around people who are practicing being an alcoholic. If we can take that simple example, we can make it into, yeah, it's better to be away from the world of unwholesome people, the world of people who are full of doubt. They don't trust each other. They're suspicious. And right now, we live in a very suspicious world. We don't trust anybody. I think, in fact, when people live in a small town, they can learn to trust each other because they know each other. But when we go to the city, now we don't know anybody, and all of the people who don't know anybody are all distrustful. And so a city is a very distrustful place, to where a small town is much more trustful because we know everybody there. Okay? We take that example and blow it into the internet, and now, wow, we've got the worldwide internet, which means every piece of information is available, but half of it is wrong. Half of it is deceitful. Half of it is garbage. And so we don't trust the internet. We have to be very careful about that. But if you can get around parts of the internet where you know that this part of the internet is wholesome, this little group of people are really caring about it. And not all Buddhist groups are wholesome on the internet. Many of them are bragging, complaining, wanting things. But when you get into a group of wholesome people, that's your Sangha. You can trust them. They've got good ideas. They've got good ways of doing things, and we can trust them. And so this is the way that we can deal with the world, is by finding a small part of it that's worthy of our time and effort. And so all of this works together. The Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. This is the Sangha portion, is that we have to be around people who are worthy of being friends with us. And we trust them, and they trust us. But like I said before, I didn't trust Goenka, but I didn't even know that until a long time later. It was only when I really was able to trust Achan Po that I know that he had the best interest for me, that he wasn't doing what he was doing for his own benefit, that what he did was for my benefit. And when I figured that out, I trusted him. Actually, it didn't take long. Something he did was quite magical. And that is that when I arrived at about 7 in the evening, just about dark, on my broken down bicycle, he was standing at the gate waiting for me. And the first thing he said to me was, "Where have you been? I've been waiting for you." And that brought instant trust in him. And it was actually years later when I found out his secret was that he had seen me out on the road. He had been to Chumpan and was coming back in the afternoon, and he saw me on that bicycle. And he says, "This guy has got only one place to come in South Thailand because there's no hotels or anything. He must be coming to Wat Suan Mok." And so Achan Po trusted that, so that he would wait for an hour or more at the gate for me to come. So he trusted me first. And then I learned to trust him. And this is what Sangha is all about, is learning to trust other people so you can begin to trust yourself. And when you can trust yourself, you got it made. That's the real satisfaction, is that you don't have any doubts anymore, that you're okay. You already know you're okay. You're good enough. Be satisfied with yourself because you're good enough already. Does anybody have any final words about this? I mean, I've been harping on the same issues over and over and over again. Dr. Susan, you have anything to say? Turn your
Yes.
mic on.
Yes, I do. What you've just finished with is something I observed, but I also experienced myself. That trust that you're okay is a real problem in the West, in particular. Is my understanding that we all believe. I don't know whether it comes from the Christianity of original sin or whether it comes from the way we're raised. All of them, I think, and that constant bombardment from television and media about how you'll look perfect if you buy this. You'll feel perfect if you do this. So that last comment of yours really rings true with me.
Great. Excellent. So, Pedro, do you have any final comments?
Beautiful side topic about the trust, about trusting others and oneself.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you guys are getting some value out of this. That's what I'm here for. I'm having fun. And I especially enjoy it when I see all the smiles and the nodding faces and the blissed out state. Oh, that's so nice. But when I see people doing this and doing this, then I know that I got some work to do here. But right now I've got I see all of these smiles and I know that we're getting someplace. So thank you all. You've made my day. So we'll see you guys again soon. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
See you soon.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye,
Bye-bye.
guys.